Thanks for joining us today. Every few weeks, we'll be answering your dental marketing questions and providing you ideas on how to generate new patients and make your practice more profitable. I'm Cheryl Pederzoli, a marketing expert here at ProSites, and I'm joined by Fanny Barrientos.
Hi, I'm also a marketing expert at ProSites, and we'll be joining Cheryl on a regular basis to help answer your questions. So let's get started with the first one. This is a question we get regularly, so Cheryl, if you could take this one. The question is, how do I get started with marketing?
That's a great question and a complicated question. So first thing to do is really start to educate yourself about what it is that you're looking to do and what are the different ways you can get there. So for example, if you're trying to find new patients, where are your patients looking for people and how do you get in front of them? So one of the things that we recommend is looking at educational resources, webinars, podcasts like this, looking at blogs, white papers. There's a lot of online resources that are free to get in. You can look at different information. You can learn about the different tactics. Next thing you really want to do is start to make a plan. So think about what your office situation is. What are your goals? Trying to understand, like I said, are you looking for new patients? Are you trying to get more money out of the patients you have today? Just kind of grow yourself and make yourself more profitable. So you think about what those goals are. Understand who it is that you have to reach out to. So if you're trying to reach out to your existing patients, how do you do that? What are the methods that you have? Can you email them? Can you send them text messages? Can you send them a postcard or a letter? If you're looking for new people, say people who live in the area and might be looking for a new dentist because they're not happy with the ones they have right now, you want to think about, how do I reach them? So it might be putting signs out in front of your office. It might be trying to make sure you've got a presence online. So if somebody searches for a dentist in their area, you actually pop up. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to try to get in front of people. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. You want to start to understand what your budget is, and not only just from a financial perspective, but also from a people perspective. So if you're going to be trying to do things, do you have somebody in your office who can help out? Or do you need to look outside and find somebody who can hire in order to help out? On a budgetary perspective, you're definitely going to need to make sure you have a website. You're going to need to make sure that the website is kept up to date. It has your information. You possibly want to do some ads and targeting. So how much money do you have to spend? We find on average dentists are spending about $500 a month on their marketing. We did a survey last year and a half now, where we actually asked that question. But the range was full gamut. Some people were spending nothing. They had a good profitable practice. They didn't have to do much on their marketing. Some people were spending thousands of dollars a month. So it varies based on where you are, what you're trying to do, what your market is, how bad your competition is, or how good your competition is. So lots of different things to think about. Then you want to start to talk about what are those actual strategies, those tactics you're going to be using. So I threw out a couple of them, making sure that you're shown when people are searching online. That's one of the strategies. Have a good, strong website. You want to have a social media presence. If you're trying to get drive-by traffic, do you have signage out front? Is it a good sign? Do people know you're a dentist? If not, change up your sign. Maybe it's a community where people are still heavily relying on the newspaper. Maybe you've got an older population. Maybe you want to do those ads in your paper. So think about all the different strategies to hit that market that fit within your budget. And then once you execute it, make sure you track it. So if you're going to be putting ads out, if you're going to be putting money in front of anything, you want to make sure you understand if it's working, so you don't repeat it if it's not working. So you also want to make sure you're tracking everything. That sounds like a lot, but if you really kind of break it down into lots of different little steps and just make a plan, write all the pieces down as you're going, you'll find that it'll all come together. It'll start to make sense. And as you educate yourself, you'll find all those different tactics you should be using and understand them a little bit better. So that's, in a nutshell, how to get started.
Yeah, super easy. Make a plan. No, but it's good. Like, I really like what you said about making a plan and figuring out who you're talking to, because that really will inform what you end up choosing, which channels you end up advertising in. And so be very thoughtful about, before even figuring out how much budget you have, be very thoughtful of who it is that you're talking to, because that really will inform everything else. Okay, so you kind of spoke to tactics a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a question we hear often. What
Yeah.
marketing tactics should I actually be using? So you want to
So, yeah,
try
I'll
that
take
one?
this one. I'll take this one. So, like I said, it's going to start with figuring out who you're talking to. So, let's take the example that you're, here, like where I am in LA, there's a lot of young professionals, right? So, it's not that big of a leap to try to get a presence online, like search engine optimization, social media, maybe some pay-per-click advertising on search engines. That is probably where you'd want to focus because the demographic sort of gravitates towards those type of channels. That's where they're going to go to try and find you. And then on the flip side, like Cheryl mentioned, if you have a little bit more of an older population, definitely still consider print and traditional marketing. I think when you use that along with some online marketing, it can be very effective. So, and then if you're considering, say, like online marketing, you're also going to want to think about, not to get too like nitty gritty, but you're going to want to think about how people would enter their search terms or try to communicate online in order to find you. So, because that is going to eventually inform search engine optimization, pay-per-click. The big part is keywords. You're going to want to figure out which keywords you're targeting, and that's really going to come from figuring out what audiences use to look for you. And then also in terms of social media, if you believe that your audience is on social media or that your future patients are, then something that you could do is try to build up that social media base so that people can actually refer you as they're talking to their friends and family online. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. Let's see. So why don't we talk about this other question is, what's the best place to spend my marketing dollars and how to track? So let's go back to like tracking.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So when you're trying to decide where to spend your marketing dollars, one of the things that I always recommend is talk to your existing patients. Find out how they heard about you, where they found you. Is it online? Is it just talking to other people? Because that's going to give you a good idea of where you should start when you're spending those marketing dollars. Hands down, we tell everybody, make sure you have a good, strong website because that is really the hub of everything. So one of the first places you want to make sure you invest in is having a good website. All your ads are going to point to it. You're going to link to it from everywhere. Google search engine is going to find you there. So make sure you spend the money there. And then once you kind of build on those other tactics, then you need to figure out how are you going to track it. So there's a handful of ways you can do that. One of the things that you can use is your website and forms on it. So if you've got a website that has a form, when people are clicking over to it and they complete the forms, you can actually use different things like Google Analytics that'll tell you where people came from when they completed that.
Mm.
Some of the website providers actually have that functionality built in, so it'll be able to tell you where they're coming from. Some of the other things you can do is use kind of some special coding. So if you've got a special offer, maybe it's a teeth whitening special, give them a little coupon code to enter into that form. So that'll also help you track it. You could also use phone numbers that are specific on different promotions. So if you're doing a newspaper ad, use one phone number. If you're doing an online ad, use a different phone number. If you're sponsoring somewhere, doing a sponsorship of a special event in your community, use something else. So that way you can actually look to see what phone calls are coming in on each line and understand what's working the best for you. Then once you get all that information in, you want to follow it all the way through. So not only are you tracking how you're getting people, but then do they actually turn into a patient? Trying to understand that, depending on what your systems are, you might actually have that information so it can feed right into your practice management system and connect it all. You could have your receptionist just ask every time somebody makes an appointment, how did you hear about us? And just have them keep track in a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet or something so that you've got the information and you can start to take a look. Then the hard part is really understanding what's working. And if you're spending the money, is it actually pulling for you? So what we always recommend is that you start to figure out what those important metrics are. So you start with a cost. How much did a certain thing cost? I'm going to use Google AdWords. So if you're paying to show up on Google, if maybe you spent $1,400 in a month on the ads that you have, you track how many visitors you get. So you can go look at Google Analytics, you can look at AdWords itself, it'll tell you how many clicks you get. Then from there, you're going to track through with whatever method you have to find out how many people became patients. So maybe you have 5 people actually became patients. Now, you know internally that on average, a patient might bring you $500 a year if they make their 2 appointments and they actually show up for just the cleaning. We're not even talking any extra services on top of that. So your 5 patients brought you $500 each. Your revenue that you've expected from these is $2,500. It only costs you $1,400 in order to actually advertise in that month. So you sit and you do the math, you realize this was a great way for you to actually advertise and bring people in. And that's a method to keep using. And you do that calculation against everything you're doing. So if it's AdWords, if it's your newspaper ad, if it's sponsoring somewhere, look at the same thing. How much did you spend? What did it generate in new patients and new patient revenue? And even if you have to just use averages, that's fine. It doesn't have to be exact. But that's going to help you understand what works. Where do I keep putting my money? Where should I not put my money anymore?
Yeah, I think that's important. I found that like when speaking to a lot of dentists, they I mean, obviously, like, we get that they understand that, the top stuff, looking through impressions and rankings and, all of that. But I think where it kind of falls off a little bit is once you get the patient in and they paid for services, like following it through once the patient is offline and in your office. So keeping historical track of everything. I think what should be kept in mind is there is some seasonality, so you may not see the same type of traffic one month to another. So,
Yep.
it's when you start out, I guess that's something that you figure out, but, month over month, things might change.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It
Yeah.
happens.
Don't give up right away
Yeah.
because it might take a few times before you get it right. And
Yeah,
if
for
if
sure.
something doesn't work, it might not be that tactic doesn't work. It just might be that you had the wrong copy that month,
Hmm.
or the message didn't go, or you hit it the wrong season.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, I'll recommend you try a couple times before you say that's not going to work, and
Yeah.
see if you can get different results different times of the year.
Yeah, that happens for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we talk about some of the tools they can use in order to, kind of keep their marketing suite up to date, and
Mhm.
um, why don't you list the tools that you like to use just for like tracking and like marketing and all of that, and then I can list some of the web tools that are available if they want to do any like online marketing.
Sure. I do real basic old school. I use Word, I use Excel. I use a lot of basic spreadsheets to kind of write down the thoughts, do my comparisons, all those ROI comparisons I talked about. I just get out an Excel spreadsheet and do that. So I use those for most of my basics. I use Google Alerts to make sure that I'm getting updates if our company is getting mentioned or if my name personally is getting mentioned. So that's another tool that I use, which is pretty easy to set up. I'm probably going to say the same things as you. Google Analytics to track my traffic. I go into AdWords campaigns if I am running them, so that I can understand what's going on with that. In a lot of cases, if you work with a company, they'll deliver you those reports so that you have that information. You don't necessarily have to go into those tools yourself. Those are some of the ones. What do you use?
Let's see. Well, since I focus more on like online marketing, we have a couple of tools that I use to just, for SEO and social media. I think the one of the biggest ones that I use more tools for is for social media and creating content. So these are free tools that dentists can use to sort of build up their social media presence. One of them is going to be canva.com. It's a free tool and it lets me create a lot of different images and social media content, and it's really easy to use. It's really intuitive. You don't have to like be an expert in Photoshop to use it, and I really like that they have like these templates. This is not an ad, by the way. I actually use this.
I use it too.
Yeah. I use it. So not sponsored. And so they do is they provide a lot of templates that you could work with. So it makes creating social media content a lot easier because everything on social media now is visual. if you're putting out updates that don't have any sort of video or photo or picture or something, it's just not going to get as much visibility because the algorithm actually prioritizes visual content. So canva.com is one of them. Let's see. What else do I use for social? Oh, I also use a lot of the scheduling tools. There's a few out there. So Twitter and Facebook, there when you're running a page, when you're an admin, you can schedule posts ahead of time. So that makes it really easy to just like schedule a batch of posts, and then I don't really have to worry about it for about a month. I kind of just keep an eye on it. And so if there's a lot of interactions, then I can focus on more of like the community aspect. I don't necessarily have to be focusing on the content. So I would definitely recommend that the scheduling tools in both Facebook and Twitter be used. And they're going to be kind of in different places, and we can link to some of these resources in the description so you guys will find it. And then let's see, Google Analytics for sure, that is free. If you're doing any sort of search engine optimization, you're going to want to implement Search Console, Google Search Console, free as well. And that will tell you which keywords you're already ranking for, what positions you're ranking in, how many clicks you're getting on that keyword. It won't tell you the exact page that people are going to, but you can kind of figure it out. And then it'll also tell you a click-through rate and, just metrics like that. So implement Google Search Console, because if you're doing any sort of SEO or you want to understand where you're starting from, rankings are important, but it's also important to understand how many impressions you're getting on keywords and how many clicks you're getting on different things. Yeah, so I think that's all of them. And again, all of these resources we can link to in the description, so you guys can just have a direct link to click on.
So I think those were the questions we had for today, for this episode. Next episode, we're going to talk about online reviews. How do you get more of them? What do you do when you see them? Things like that. So come back, stay tuned, and it was great to talk to everybody.